All right, we're recording. It's getting serious now. So we have 4 amazing panelists with us today. And Keisha, I would love to start with you. You are the Assistant Director for the Anti-Defamation League. And you do so many amazing things in our community. Tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do there.
Hello, everyone. First, good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about tonight. So my main job is with the Anti-Defamation League. We are a civil rights organization. We fight against the defamation of Jewish people and fair and just treatment for all. So it's very important to call out that dual mission of what we do because it really is fighting against hate and bigotry and racism against all classes of people. So with them, I am responsible for pretty much the operations of the office of the entire state. So I train on bias and hate crimes. I'm responsible for our Glass Leadership Institute, which is a young professionals leadership program that we have. I respond to hate incidents or any type of incidents that are reported into the office, and really a liaison for our community partners and organizations that we work with to fighting against hate in our communities, really, and in our society. So that's my one hat. And aside from that, I actually run a nonprofit where I mentor young girls ages 9 to 17. It's a girls leadership program, and really excited about that and the connection with mentorship and other things that I do in the community. So thank you, Adrienne.
So excited to have you. Fighting hate in our community, that's a big mission. So we're gonna definitely talk more about that. And you have that great experience running a mentorship program. So thank you so much. Sarah, you are another woman who wears so many different hats. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself in whatever way makes sense to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me tonight and allowing me to share space with all of you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Tyree. I am a small business owner. I am the founder of Intuitive Transformations. We focus solely on spiritual mental health and also alternative medicine. But in my many hats that I wear, I am also a community activist. I am one of the leaders to the Unity Collective. I am also the criminal justice chair to the West Valley NAACP. I am a part of the YPC program, and I also am on a number of boards that have to do with the West Valley and also domestic violence. I am an Arizona native. I'm a former foster care youth. So Big Brothers Big Sisters holds a really big place in my heart. And I am also an 8-year veteran, and I'm just so thankful to be able to be here and share space with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, so excited to learn more about what you do as well, because yeah, that was a lot of different things that you do. So we're gonna dive into some of them as well. Debbie, you are a consultant and also the founder of Morning Star. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of background. I don't know if you guys can hear that echo, if it's just me. But tell us about the presentation.
Sure. She Sandra Kinchlan, Setlan Bething Bushes Chin, Sitna Jenny Dasha Chait, Kabahantichinale. I am a citizen of the Navajo Nation, and I live here in the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, which is just east of Scottsdale and north of Mesa. And I have so many different passions that drive the work that I do. I really enjoy serving, communities especially when there are situations or gaps in services. So by profession, I'm a social worker, but within our cultural communities, I really believe in mentoring and helping to shape the minds of young people. A number of years ago, we organized a we started as a grassroots organization and realized, after some time that we needed to find funding and supports to drive some of the things that we were doing. So we organized a nonprofit that serves Native youth and leadership development. And that organization today is called Morning Star Leaders. And while the organization is intended to serve youth, we really supported youth in driving the programming. So they organize community events, and as parents and as what we would say aunties and uncles in the communities, we would come along and support them in what they wanted to pursue. So those projects that we carried on each year, if it was a backpack drive to some sort of fundraising or going out to get training for them, were really great opportunities to connect with youth and tie them to other organizations and just keep supporting them. The pandemic has slowed our programming down, and just like probably many others as well, but we went ahead and changed the scope so we could really focus on us serving communities in different ways. If that was cultural resiliency, promoting mental health and wellness, or having drives to serve PPEs for different communities in Arizona. So a lot of that is just because we care about our communities, and often there's limited limited funds or services available for Native American communities here in the urban areas. So we try to balance between urban, rural, and remote areas. So that's a little bit of what I do, but I continue to do consulting outside of that. Sometimes you just need somebody to come in and do some quick work on a project and just make it happen. And so I enjoy that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people's mission and work has definitely transformed here to meet the changing needs of our community. So look forward to hearing more about that. And then our last presenter today, Jean-Marie, is joining us from California. Tell us about you.
It's really good to be here. My name is Jean-Marie Navetta. My pronouns are she and her, or if you speak Spanish, ella. And I'm the Director of Learning and Inclusion at PFLAG National. So I oversee all of our programs across the United States related to education and inclusion. PFLAG is the nation's oldest and largest LGBT and ally organization. We were founded nearly 50 years ago by the mom of a gay man who realized that she had a lot of power because she was not a member of our community and people would listen to her. And she actually showed up at the second ever Pride Parade with her son carrying a sign calling on other parents to do the same kind of thing. And that's how we were born. PFLAG has a chapter network of over 400 chapters across the US that have all continued doing their work during the pandemic virtually, which is really important because in many places we are the only organization for people to join on LGBTQ issues. I run a program called Straight for Equality, which was launched about 13 years ago, as PFLAG saw a really big difference in our membership demographic, which was, it wasn't just parents coming to our meetings because they needed help, but it was lots of people who were saying things like, I've got a gay friend, I've got a trans friend, and I want to know how to be more supportive, but I don't know what that looks like. And so I spend my time educating on that. In my work, I spend a lot of time in people's workplaces. In any given year, I probably teach about between 100 and 110 classes in different workplaces across the country, which I'm really proud to say we kept doing in spite of the pandemic. I've never spent so much time staring at my own face on a computer in my whole life, and I'm really looking forward to not seeing it anymore. So that is exactly what I do. And the work that I'm doing really is focused on how do we start meeting people where they are to have conversations about change and inclusion. And what does that look like in an inclusive way that is respectful of people's cultural backgrounds, of people's socioeconomic backgrounds, people's religious backgrounds. So that's a very big conversation, but it is about extending the olive branch, about seeing people as who we are, recognizing each other's dignity, and moving forward that way. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is I'm actually on the National Advisory LGBTQ Council for Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and I've been working on some of the projects happening in the network that are really phenomenal and I'm very proud of. So thank you, I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. Yes, we are so excited to have so many amazing, accomplished women advocating for our mission of helping all youth achieve their full potential through this one-to-one mentoring. And I think it would be fair to say, I don't want to speak for you, but you were also accomplished. I imagine you had some help along the way from some of your own mentors. So Jean-Marie, is there anyone specific that you would like to tell us about who has meant a lot to you or has helped you to where you are today?
Definitely. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about a woman named Ashley Carr. She was my boss at the American Association of University Women. And this woman literally changed the course of my life. Around 9/11, it was a really difficult time to be a resident of DC, which I was at the time. And I had decided I kind of wanted to withdraw from some of the more political work that I had done and kind of pulled away from some of the normal advocacy work. And at one point, a friend of mine who was working at AAUW called me and asked me to come in as a temp designer for them, and which I did. And Ashley was the director of communications, and this woman saw something in me. I was recovering from a lot of trauma. It was a very difficult time, and she just started talking to me one day, this little graphic designer sitting in a corner somewhere, and she knew that I had something, and was absolutely positively relentless in asking me about what I knew and what I wanted to do. And right about the time my contract was supposed to end on this project, she came over to me one day and she said to me, "Have you ever worked with the press?" And I said, "Well, I used to be a journalist. I wrote." And she said, "I have a press secretary job open. Do you think you want it?" And I said to her, "I'm not qualified for this." And she said, "Oh, I know you can do it." And the "I know you can do it" changed my life. I will tell you now, I should not have had that job. There was nothing that qualified me for it other than I think Ashley believed I could. And she taught me how to do stuff. And she challenged me every single time I would walk into her office and say to her, "I don't think I can do this. I don't know what the other people know." She would look at me and say, "Well, figure it out. Let's figure this out." And she would just push me. And I was actually just telling a story recently about being on Capitol Hill one day with all of these other really high-powered press secretaries looking around and thinking, I can do this too. And look at me, I'm here with them and I'm doing this. And I keep thinking it was because of Ashley. And one of the most meaningful things for me with Ashley, beyond her just being willing to take a chance and the fact that she never left me alone, she pushed me and pushed me and pushed me, was when I finally told her that I was going to leave AAUW and I had been offered a job at PFLAG. She sat me down and she said to me, "Do you know that when we first talked, you said to me one day you're going to work for PFLAG?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." And she said, "I knew you'd figure out a way to do this. And now look at you and you're going." And just talking about it actually gets me a little choked up because I realized that had Ashley Carr not been there, had she not given me that opportunity, I'm not exactly sure what I'd be doing now, but it was that skill set that she gave me and that sense of, I know this woman can do it, that transformed everything. And my life from there never looked the same. I went to PFLAG and everything changed, but it literally was because of one woman seeing something in this girl sitting there who had absolutely no reason to have this job. And she just saw it. And I give her such incredible credit for seeing the talent and being willing to develop the talent. And particularly with me, constantly telling me that I could be there. I could be on Capitol Hill with everybody else. I could be at the press club with everyone else. And I could do just as much as everyone else, even if I didn't come from the educational pedigree or the political hybrid that they did. And for that, I will always, always, always honor her. In fact, I actually just sent her a thing the other day to tell her I was going to talk about her because in the timeline of my life, she may be one of the most important women, and I'll never forget that mentorship.
That's amazing. I think we all teared up listening to you because we can all think of that person who said that to us. I know that you can do it. Like that imposter syndrome is so strong, and just to find when someone just tells you, "I know that you can do it," someone you admire and respect, that just changes the world for you.
It does. And I didn't believe that I could do it, and she knew it, and that was everything. And it's been a lesson to me. That's what I need to do with other women. Yes. Tell them that they do have it. Like that was the ultimate model I learned from her.
Yes. And that's something that we try and work into our programs. Is one of the things we're always saying is it's just the youth that we serve don't need to be fixed or saved. They just need to be supported. They just need someone to say, "I know that you can do it." Someone that they know and trust and respect. So that's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Debbie, what about you? Tell us about someone who's played that role for you.
I think one of the strongest influencers I've had are, they come from my tribal community. They teach a lot of the culture and the teachings. They promote and foster resiliency. When you're in doubt, turn to an auntie and they're there for you. And so I think of, Native American women who play that auntie role, that are really there for you. But when it really, really came down to it, when my education started was when I was at Northern Arizona University, and I started my undergrad program. And Dr. Ann Medill is a woman who really had done some work in Tuba City, which is on the Navajo Nation. And she was also very familiar with the Salt River Indian community, where she started a youth service program. And she asked me, it's time for your internship, Debbie. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? And I just said, wow, I said, I'm going back to Navajo Nation, because that's what we're taught from a very young age, is that you serve your nation and you serve the people and the community. And so I told her that. And she says, no, you're not going to do that. And I'm like, what are you saying? And immediately I felt like, this is a white person telling me, as an Indigenous woman, I can't go back to my nation. She goes, you're going to learn so much, Debbie, if you do something different. I don't want you to get caught in the system. So she broke down this picture for me, and she helped me to see the potential barriers that were ahead. And she says, I know you're capable of doing so much more, and I'm going to challenge you to go to another tribal nation, and I'm going to challenge you to get to know other people, and I want to challenge you in every way possible. And you're going to do this in a summer block program. And I was really confused. She said, I'm going to send you down to the Salt River Indian community. And I said, where is that place? I had no clue where the Salt River Indian community is. And she said, well, that's where the Pimas live. And I was like, the Pimas. I'm like, I remember that from my Arizona government class. And then I said, well, I don't know where this is at. So long story short is I figured out where it was at. And I'm grateful that she held her ground in her position to say, no, you're not gonna get kind of thrown into the fire. You're gonna take some time and learn about services, learn about systems and how they work and don't work, and where tribes can do more and they can improve. And I took the challenge. I came to a tribal community, and man, she stayed on top of me the entire time of my learning, and she introduced me to an amazing network. And as much as I love serving my own tribal nation, I do that in a lot of other ways. So I hats off and shout out to Dr. Ann Medill up in NAU. And I know she's been there for so many other social workers. And there's been people who play that role, either social workers or school counselors, who stepped in when it was really critical. And they influence how I make my decisions. They influence paths I gotta take. And sometimes they'll tell me, well, you might want to try this because, you can always do this later, but this will lay the groundwork for you. And sometimes you have to have faith and trust in what they're telling you. And I'm glad for all of the experiences that she introduced me to. And I ran into her over in Tempe at a pizza shop, and I was so grateful. And she's like, Debbie, you did all the work. I didn't do anything. But how do you tell another woman, how much of an influence she has in your life when all she thinks is, that she was doing her job? But it was such an impression, and always grateful to her for exposing me to that, challenging me to that, and helping me to see that I can do a little bit more exploration and do so much more with it.
That's amazing. Yes, it's always about possibilities. They're not telling you that this is the way you have to go, or you can't go that way. They're just showing you all the options. And using, your skills, your interests, they take you where you need to go, but they definitely help open the doors. And it's not always in that official capacity. It's, they don't always realize how the impact that they're having. Thank you for sharing that. Keisha, what about you? Tell us about some of your mentors.
Yes, well, I have to say I've been fortunate to have quite a few mentors, both professionally and personally throughout my life, both men and women. at some point or another. So I'm blessed in that. But when I read that and I thought about the question and who, could I actually talk about? Because there has been a few. I go back to my early career, actually early working in my early 20s when I was at Loyola University, Chicago, and I was working in the HR department. And when I first started working, I don't know about any of you on the call, but women had very strict dress codes that we had to abide by, with hosiery and closed-toe shoes, and it nothing compared to what what we wear today as business casual to work. But I remember coming to work and I remember saying to her, I was going to wear something and I thought about it and I wasn't sure if it would be in par with the dress code. I didn't, but I had it on, I took it off. I can't remember what the item was. And she said to me, if you ever have to second guess yourself, then don't. And that seems so small, but it has stuck with me throughout my entire life because it allowed me, thinking like that allowed me to take risks. Thinking like that also confirmed with that intuition that I have to not second guess myself. So anytime that I would second guess myself, whether it was a yes, I should do this, or a no, I shouldn't, I always go with my first instinct, my gut instinct, to either yes, I am, or no, I'm not. And I've never been wrong about that. And so that advice that she gave me, I've always remembered that. And she gave me a lot of other advice throughout careers and stuff too, about whether or not, taking management positions versus support roles and things like that, that I would come up against in certain careers and jobs that I had. But that one piece of advice that she gave me, really, I think about it all the time. I think about it every time I'm faced with a decision. Should I or shouldn't? Don't second guess myself. Go with that first gut instinct of what I'm going to do. And that's what I step out on every time I'm faced with decisions.
That's awesome. And it's interesting that's come from one of your mentors, because I have heard you say that to our Young Nonprofit Professionals Network. So I love seeing that, that mentorship being passed on from one person. It's like, it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, it was great advice for me, and I am happy to share it with other people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Let's not waste time with any of that second guessing. Mm-hmm. And Sarah, I know that you had some really special people you wanted to recognize today as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I really tried to think about, I don't know, honestly, there wasn't just one woman in my life that I could just give all of this credit to. So I mentioned earlier that I'm a former foster care youth. And during this time, this was back in the early 2000s, when we had our last Black female state senator, Leah Landrum Taylor. And during that time, while I was in foster care, she fought for kinship care. And truly it was because of her and the fight that she fought for children to be able to stay within their family, that I was able to go to someone else within my family instead of living in a group home and being under the state's care. Only to find, I had no idea of that. And so when I ran for office last cycle, I found that out. And it was such an honor and so amazing for me to come full circle, running to be the next Black state senator, and find out that she led that fight that allowed me to literally still be here alive today. And so that was just, it was one of the moments that was just so inspiring to me. Miss Debbie, you are another one of those ladies who I truly value, because you've literally been through so much. You've literally been through so much, and you're still here. You haven't allowed it to break you, and you continue to fight, and you continue to teach people about our Indigenous brothers and sisters, and what we need to know that we don't know, and that our education system does not teach us. And so you are another one of those women who were truly just inspiring to me. And during our cycle, you gave me those words of encouragement and that validation that I truly needed. And I feel like there's not very many people that can do it. One, because social workers have a different language, but also there are not many people who know what it's like to be a candidate. And so I really valued the conversations that you and I had during that time. Another person for me is my best friend. I've known her for 31 years, I think. She was the very first person, and this just happened like 3 years ago, to tell me that I was smart. And I think that we were sitting in the middle of the hospital, and I just broke down because I had never had somebody tell me that I was smart before. And it made me feel sad that I had to go 30 something years to have somebody tell me that, but also so thankful because there are so many children that we serve who don't ever hear that, right? Their parents don't know that they need to say that, or their parents don't know how to say that, or their caregivers don't know how to say that. And so I try to make sure, instead of just telling our young girls like, oh, you're so beautiful, or you're so pretty, you are intelligent, you are smart, you can do whatever you want. Because those few words really they just changed my life. And I don't want other girls to have to wait 30 years to hear that from somebody. And the last person, ironically, is my hair lady. She's amazing. Shout out to you, Tyree, because she just has her hands in so many things, and she's so caring. And I've never seen somebody co-parent the way that she co-parented. And there are days where I just feel so down about myself, and kind of like Jean-Marie, where you were talking about, like, I can't do it. I'm not doing the things that I need to be doing. You know, we get stuck in this analysis paralysis. And she's like, Sarah, when I met you, you were talking about remodeling your house. You were talking about running for office. You were talking about doing all those things, and you've already done them. You know, and it was kind of like this snap back to reality, like, oh, you're right, you know, and sometimes you just need those girlfriends that can do that. So I think those are the 4 women who have really impacted my life in the last couple of years.
I'm on mute, sorry. But really touching. And I love something that you said, you know, sometimes your mentors are opening doors that you didn't even know were closed for you. Either you couldn't see it or you didn't know it was an option. And so just having someone who has an outside perspective and that vision for you, it can be really powerful. And Sarah, one of the other things that you touched on a little bit was this idea of resiliency and what your mentors can do to help build that. That's, you know, a key component of our programs. We have seen that having a mentor can help youth develop those resiliency skills. And especially in a year like this, when they don't have access to their normal school, they're physically separated from their networks of support, you know, their extended family, their friends. And youth are feeling all those things that we're feeling from their families, anxiety about the health and safety of their friends and families, all those same things we're feeling. They just don't necessarily have the same practice we have in managing those emotions. So what role do you think that mentorship plays in building resiliency?
Girl, I feel like it's a lot. I feel like the streets raised me. Like, I have to say that. It was my community that raised me. It wasn't like it is today, where, you know, we call DCS and DCS intervenes, or it was my neighbors. It was my teachers. It was the people who saw me day in and day out and interacting with their kids, who made sure that I was good and that you know, that I was looked out for. And I wouldn't be here without those people. It was me having my guardian ad litem and having my own casa, you know, to make sure that I was taken care of. And especially for days like this, where we're in the middle of a pandemic, I think it's so important, because like our kids don't want to talk to our parents. Like, you know, like I didn't want to talk to my parents, and it's so much more today. And so I think it's so important for us and for our kiddos to have those big sisters and those big brothers, because it's somebody that is there solely for them. Somebody that they can talk to in a judgment-free zone, and they can share with their anxieties and their depressions and like how stressed out their parents make them. And, you know, like, we want to go hiking today or whatever it is. So I think it's just so important that our kids have outlets outside of the home that allow them to, I think, just be human, So truly, I just think it's so important that we continue to foster these mentorship programs. Absolutely.
And Jean-Marie, I see you nodding your head. I imagine this is something that you encounter all the time in your work. What does this look like for you?
This is a really big deal because a lot of queer youth don't have role models. Like, you're young and we're seeing young people coming out at younger and younger and younger ages. And, some of them will vocalize, some of them will be lucky enough to connect with somebody, but that is a rare experience in fact, it's really sometimes hard to find somebody. And, as we look at the way this has unfolded during COVID, I think it has even intensified that even more. I was looking at a couple of numbers to see about experience about youth, over the past year. And what you see consistently are really, really bad numbers that kind of challenge resiliency. I mean, I took notes. I have to admit, I didn't memorize this, but the University of Maryland did a study and they found that during COVID, for example, queer youth heard a 30% increase in negative comments about people like them from their parents. 35% of them said they have done more to hide their identities. The Trevor Project saw double the number of calls that they normally get of queer youth in crisis. I think it speaks more than ever to the need for mentors who can teach things like resiliency. And how do you survive these really difficult times? A colleague of mine said something that stuck with me so profoundly at the beginning of COVID, which was, we have queer youth right now who are in quarantine with their risk factors being their parents. And let that really sink in. And I think it makes the need for mentors and people who are out there even more critical, because no one teaches us how to navigate the world as queer people. And that is why mentors make all the difference in the entire world. They can be lifelines, they can restore support, and they can reiterate for kids that they are okay and that they are good and that they are worth everything in the entire world, because it is the stuff that they are not hearing from their families. And especially in states where we are seeing some of these really, really brutal pieces of legislation, mentors become even more necessary, because what is happening is terrifying and kids are dying because of it. So where families can't come in, mentorship is everything.
Yeah, that's really startling when you think about it in that way. We so often think of quarantine as this inconvenience. It's hard, it's boring, it's not a lot of fun. But when you think about it in that context, it's realistically very dangerous for certain people. And having someone outside of the home who's there as a resource is crucial. So thank you for bringing that to light. Debbie, what about you? What does this look like in your community?
One of the goals that we had during this time was really finding ways that we could reach youth around Arizona, if they were 2 or 3 at a time, to 15 people. And we reached out and supported the community to I think one of the highest rates that we experience in tribal communities is suicide. And especially among our youth who, just if they're youth, but if they're dealing with identity, issues, if it's LGBTQ or, being in foster care, and or even going through having those experiences where they struggle with their education during the pandemic. And there's so many reasons, but we decided to promote cultural resiliency. So we hosted a few sessions where we led conversations with cultural speakers, and they talked about either stories that reconnected them to their roots, stories that would help them to grow and realize that they weren't in this alone. There was a lot of people there. And I think that by doing that, we really stress how important resiliency is for us, no matter what age you are. It's so interesting that I'm speaking right now and I can hear that my daughter's playing basketball outside. So I hope you can't hear that. But it's so important to stress that among our youth. One of the goals that I use to measure our success within Morningstar Leaders is the rate of suicide. we're very, very fortunate to know that the students that we've served when we started they have considered suicide. We had an intervention with one of our young people, and come to find out there was a larger number of youth that we were working with who had contemplated either the intent to harm themselves, or had a plan in place, or even took action to make that happen. And we were able to sit and talk with them, and throughout the time that we worked with our youth, we didn't have a suicide. And so I always say that's a huge success, serving Native American youth. And they returned year after year. They carried out activities. And if they felt those pressures, they found a way to talk with one another about it. And the whole time it's about, culture, it's about understanding who they are as young people. So I feel like we were doing really well, and we continued that through the programming. And as we go forward, we continue to recognize that this is even a new normal. Young people dealing in a pandemic, how do we reach them, especially in remote areas where broadband doesn't exist, or they don't have the technology to connect with us? How do we make that happen in a very safe way? So those are all new questions, and how do we shift our programming to make that possible? But the goal is to really keep our young people alive, keep them hopeful, give them something action oriented to take part in, and go from there.
I imagine that's, hard to talk about that. That's one of your units of measurement, but being alive is a wonderful accomplishment for someone who is really struggling. And one of the things we sometimes hear from bigs is, I don't know if I'm having an impact. I don't know if my little likes me. I come and they don't really say anything. And it's just showing up. Like if they showed up, that means they're into it. That's all you need is for them to keep coming. And it's that consistency that makes all the difference. So I love that you're creating space for that in your program, just that consistency to keep people coming. Sometimes that's all you have to do.
I love what our youth are telling us. They're telling us that they need certain things. They're very specific about it. And then they all have the nonverbals that say, no, this is not what I want.
Yes.
And I love their honesty. You can't go wrong if you're really paying attention and listening to the verbal and nonverbal cues that they give you. And it works for us. And I'm glad that we can serve youth in this way. And I think as time goes on, there's a lot of opportunities for them to advocate for themselves when we give them a chance and we give them a voice to do that. So
yes, giving them a voice to do that and building that trusting relationship where they feel safe enough to say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. It often starts with what they don't want. That's an easier place to start. But that's a start. Show up, say what you don't want, and then hopefully we can get to where you feel comfortable telling me what you do want. Keisha, I imagine you have seen this in your mentoring programs as well. What does it look like for you?
Yeah, I've seen it in my mentoring program, but the community as well. Just kind of piggybacking on what you were saying, Adrienne, the importance of that mentorship is being that constant. It's something that's been there, that it's always there. It doesn't matter. Kids don't care what you're doing with them. They only care that you're spending time with them, that you show up, that time is allocated for the two of you all, whether you're talking, whether you're able to be in contact with each other one-on-one, face-to-face, whatever it is, you just have to show up for those kids. And so having that time, because all of our worlds, were upended last year, a year ago, we all were thrown off of our, normal course of living into this, kind of disoriented and confused cloud, and had to get ourselves together. But for kids, I really have found that if you are just there for them, and you just continue to be that constant source for them, it is a source of strength that ends up being very valuable to them. And I see that, and it's very important, especially in the Black community. I want to say that specifically because mental health is a huge issue for us, for our children, for adults. There's a stigma against getting help, recognizing mental health, and then getting help for it. First of all, we're up against lack of services and lack of access in a lot of our communities, lack of understanding that this is really a disease, and again, admitting it and getting help for it. So we come against that a lot in our community, and having those mentors that are there, not necessarily trained to deal with that, but those mentors that, like I said, it's just that constant presence for that child. It's just something that's consistent, something that's stagnant, something that they know is always going to be there, that they can look up to and look forward to that interaction with their big or with their mentor, whomever it is. And well, I've seen it. I'm the mother of a former big, or little, should I say, not big, a former little. I'm hoping he's going to become a big one day. I'm waiting on that, Laura, for Marcus to become that big. But just knowing that was important in his life, and sometimes, and we've told our stories, myself and Matt and my son, and times when, Marcus wouldn't be into whatever it is that Matt was doing. But later on, he would realize Marcus would say something or do something that would just, let Matt know he was paying attention. He was into that date. I think it was one specifically he talked about at one event where they were, it was Halloween, and he was trying to get him to carve these pumpkins. And my son just didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. He wanted to have nothing to do with no pumpkin carving. And Matt talks about how he was just getting, just kind of angry and mad because he was trying to do this with him and he didn't want to do it. And he said, my son turned around to him. We all get choked up when we talk about it. My son turned around to him and he said, Matt, this is just the best day ever, isn't it? And it just let him know as a big that it may not be exactly what he wanted, but he is getting the attention and the love and the time out of that, sharing with him, just being there, not necessarily the activity. He wasn't into that, but he was into just the time of them being together. And so I think that's something that we have to really remember and communicate, especially to those that are doing the mentoring. Just be there. That's all you have to do, is just be there.
I love that story so much, because that's so true. That's something we hear from our mentors all the time, is they're so frustrated. They don't know if what they're doing makes a difference, or if their little is into what they're doing, but they're noticing, like the littles notice. And what they notice is that you are choosing to be there, that you are choosing to give your time with them. Unlike, a staff person, a teacher, like even a family member, like you're there because you have to be there, which all of those relationships are great and important, but to have someone who is choosing to be there with you, they find you interesting and important enough to give up their free time to spend with you. I mean, that's amazing for anyone. That's what we feel about our friends, is how amazing that they be here with me. So I love that so much. We only have about a little less than 15 minutes, and I promise we'd stay on time. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to those. I do have one last question. Whoever wants to answer it, feel free. We are always looking to enroll more little sisters. In a lot of areas of our service, community, we serve Maricopa and Pinal County. We end up just having more big sisters than big brothers. And so we're definitely working on that from the perspective of recruiting more big brothers, but we also want to recruit more little sisters. So what would you guys say to a parent or guardian who is trying to decide whether they think their daughter could benefit from having a mentor in our program? Go for it. Sorry, I know you can't tell who I'm going to get.
No, I had to get myself off unmute. I encourage for women to actually put their daughters through the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. As women, we nurture our daughters. You know, we love our daughters. And sometimes we don't think that anyone can have a greater influence over our daughters than we can, even though I don't have a daughter, but you know, that's just what it is. And it's not that, it's going back to you know, the whole mentality of it takes a village. You know, if we are truly, like women say, we're a sisterhood and we're about uplifting our children, we have to think about uplifting not just grown women, adult women, but also young females. We have to think about that, and that includes exposing them to a multitude of resources. And I can think of a better resource than big brothers or big sisters, to have them have them someone that they can bounce things off of, that can introduce them to things that they may normally not get introduced to. That is so important. I mean, I go back to my son, but there is so much that the organization has to offer. I mean, my son went to the opera and all kind cooking classes and just things he normally would not have done. And I think about that for girls and what they're missing out on, and the exposure that they can have just having that mentor early on. And I think if we did that more for our daughters, we could see them begin to develop into these young leaders that we want them to be sooner rather than later.
I think Keisha's got it totally down. I was just going to say, we can't be good at everything. Like, we can't know everything. And I think, you know, as somebody here talking about queer youth, not every parent knows exactly what's on a kid's mind or what they're concerned about or how they're trying to understand their identity. But there are people there who can. And, you know, one of the questions I always think is, ask somebody, you know, did you have a mentor? Was there someone who made a difference for you? Doesn't someone else deserve that opportunity? And if you didn't have someone, here's that chance to make sure that it happens. But I love, it's true, it does take a village, because we can't be good at absolutely everything that a child needs. And this gives you this unbelievable extended village you may not have even known about. And that is really exciting stuff.
You know, as a parent, I had signed up my children for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and that they did really well. I think that they had a chance to meet my daughter. My oldest one, she was very specific. I think she asked for somebody who was not within her culture, so she could learn about, you know, someone else's way of life and what they cared about. And that was something that we did, and it was amazing. And then I think for a parent, for me, I had to trust. I had to trust someone else with my child, and I had to learn how to let go, which is not always easy. You know, being a protective parent, and but the things that came back and the questions that they had, it really gave us a chance to connect on a more really, I think, on a more personal level. When they asked questions about foods they ate or experiences they had. And I'm grateful for those kinds of experiences. And I think that as a parent, for me, is I really wanted them to really appreciate what we had at home. And by showing them other, you know, other cultures and what they have, not that they were going without, but you know, if they see something or if they experience something, it really gave them a sense of security, like, I'm okay where I'm at. It's not always, the grass is not always greener somewhere else. You know, I'm okay where I'm at. And I think as a parent, that was really powerful for me.
I'll jump in there real quick. I think, so my answer is going to be two-pronged, because I think that we cannot talk about how do we include more little sisters without talking about like marketing, right? Because when I talk to Black women, a lot of the things that I hear is that, you know, they consider Big Brothers Big Sisters to be for more white families, right? And so that means that we need to do better at marketing to our communities of color and ensuring that not just our kids that are in foster care have bigs, but also that our, you know, our general community understands that there are people out there who are willing to step in and become a part of your family too, you know, without any type of compensation, right? Like, it's not something that people are like wanting to, like, they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. And I think another one of the things, like you guys touched on, like being a mom and like not knowing everything, but also not wanting to like, how do I trust somebody else with my kid? Big brothers, big sisters, you got to go through a whole slew of background and questions and interviews and all on both sides, not just the big, but the little and the family. And if you're a parent and you're considering it, like ask to meet the big. And if you don't get good vibes, cool. Like, let's try to find you another one. Like it is somebody for your child, but it is also inherently somebody that's going to become a part of your family. Right. And so like you have to be able to be comfortable with that person. And so I think, just telling our families that they can ask those questions and that they can advocate for themselves and, and make sure that this person is the right fit for their child, like that's okay. And I think when it comes to our communities of color and also our LGBTQ families, like advocacy and autonomy are things that are often taken away from us. Right. And so if we can make sure that they know that they have the autonomy and this is their choice and they can say, you know what, this isn't working, let's find a different family or whatever the situation is. And we remind them of those things. I think that they would be more interested in trying to find programs that allow for their children to grow, but also give our parents some of that breathing room that they need. Right. So, I think we just need to get some more of that autonomy, but also make sure that we're marketing to everyone and not just a specific set of people.
Such great points, like amazing. I feel like I gave you guys all the bullet points for this discussion, but I promise I didn't. You guys covered them all. And I could talk to you literally all night. And I love hearing your stories. Thank you guys so much for being willing to share. I don't see any more questions in the chat. So we will, just kidding. Bobby got one in real quick. What do you do to keep your self-care going? And this is a big one because we've talked about a lot of heavy things today. And being a mentor, we're talking about taking care of other people, but taking care of yourself is just as important. So maybe whoever wants to address it, one or two things on how you take care of yourself.
Take a social media vacation. Best thing in the entire world. I didn't shut down my Facebook account. I just chose not to go to it. And I have to tell you, I felt so much better about the entire universe and specifically myself. And I have a very lovely group of Facebook friends, but it is oppressive after a while. And it reinforces a lot of things that are going on in your universe, sometimes in not so great ways. And I think allowing yourself to detach and know the world will keep spinning without you actually does a lot. It reminds you that you're just this big in the big picture of things, and that it's okay to walk away sometimes, and that it doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means you're kind of brilliant because it's a smart thing to do, but don't be afraid of walking away.
Yes. Sometimes you have to say no today so you can say yes to something tomorrow, something more important.
I think what I've found is we had actually, let's see, in February, we had a litter of puppies. And generally I would say no animals, they cost too much, they take too much time, but it really has taught me to stop and slow down and just play, and that's been really good for me. We have 9 little puppies and it's been amazing, and they're all going to get rehomed, but but I'm in that place now. I was like, okay, that was a good healthy dose of fun. So I enjoyed it.
That's amazing. Yes, I love my dogs too. They make a big difference.
For me, I used to be horrible at this. I mean, very horrible at self-care. And literally, it's been within the last few months that I have started to really pay attention of taking care of self. But what I've done now is whenever I feel like it, I unapologetically take a day off. It does not matter. And I don't care if I'm just laying with my feet hanging over the couch. I just got my pajamas on all day. If I'm eating whatever, I don't think about anything that's going to be like, you shouldn't be doing this or you should be doing that. And when those thoughts come in, I just go, I'm not looking at my email. I'm not picking up my laptop. I am not doing this. I'm not going to care today. All I care about is me and whatever it is I want to do today. And so I've learned to do that. And I'm starting to find myself taking those days a little more often than I had anticipated. But you have to, and that's my way of digesting it. Yes, Jean, I won't look at social media. I don't watch the news that day. I'm just binge watching whatever I want on TV, whether it's a documentary or a comedy, it could be an 80s movie. I don't care, but whatever it is, it's just going to be about me and me only that day.
I love it.
I second that, girl. We need to take breaks. We don't need to be working 40, 80 hours a week. No, that's not the American dream. We need to be able to live life. So I 2000% second that. And for me, traveling is one of the things that I really try to do for myself. I try to take at least 2 big out of country trips a year. Obviously with COVID, that kind of hampered things, but I'm excited that in June, we're going to Costa Rica. And so I'm so ready to just be in some rainforest and be on the beach somewhere that's not in America and just be all the things that you said and not on my phone and not answering emails and I don't know, you better ask somebody else this week. It's not me. Because it's just so important. But when I am here in home, plants are my thing. I love plants. They give me life. I probably got like 50 plants in my house. So that's what I do. I just love all my plants. They make me happy.
Sarah, the other two, was it 2? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. It's been about 2 weeks. I took a self vacation to Santa Monica because we can't travel too many places. But I went on Santa Monica, stayed on the pier. I did not take my laptop with me. I'm like, I am not even taking my laptop. I totally shut it down. I told people, don't text me, don't call me. You're not going to get a response unless it's an and I'll decide what the emergency is. But I'm off the grid for a couple of days, for a few days. I'm off the grid, and it just does wonders for your soul. I'm right there with you. Mm-hmm.
It does. We went to San Diego a couple weeks ago, a turnaround trip, 2 days. We spent like $250 the entire time for the flight, for the Airbnb. Like, we just needed to get away. And yes, it was only like a 36-hour trip, but it wasn't here at home. It was something to break up that monotony. So if you can do it, don't make the excuses, just do it. Trust your instinct. Go do it.
Thank you, ladies, so much for being here with us tonight. And you all deserve some serious self-care tonight. So I hope when everyone logs off, you're going to go binge watch that show, read your book, whatever it is. It's so well deserved. Thank you for sharing your insight and your stories. It has really been an honor to share in some of those stories. So thank you guys so much. And I hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you. Thank you.